So, welcome back to the Amman Innovation in Politics Forum 2020. If you're just joining us, you have missed a great start to the two-day program. Earlier, we had a fantastic conversation about the power of networks. How can we build and grow our networks in a way that authentically connects with people, both in person and also online in these times that we find ourselves in? We also had the launch of the Rethink Politics in the MENA region, the I-Values initiative that was launched by Joseph Lynch. So please do check that out if you missed that. We're also following all the comments and the ideas that you're sharing on the hashtag Innovating Politics. And I also want to ask you, wherever you are right now, to take a picture, a selfie, or even just a picture of the screen if your hair is not looking that great. Upload a picture of wherever you are watching from wherever in the world, and we want to make sure that we know where you are. So do tag at FNF MENA, whether that's on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, or even just for a comment on our YouTube feed. We want to hear from you, so share your ideas, share your comments, and tell us what you find most interesting in these conversations. Coming up a little bit later, we're also going to be talking to Steve Clemens. Now, he's the former editor-at-large for The Atlantic, and he's the current editor-at-large for The Hill, based in Washington, D.C. That conversation is coming up a little bit later, and we're extremely excited to have him with us and hear a little bit from his amazing career and his perspective, based in the U.S., how that impacts on policymaking in this region. So you still have some time to Google him a little bit and find out more about the history of his career and the insights that he might bring before we have that conversation. Before we get to that, let's dig into the next chapter of this forum, focusing on innovation and partnerships in the Mediterranean region. Now, this links to the topic a little bit to what we spoke about earlier, and the power of networks and how we can formalize these cooperative partnerships in the region in a way that makes innovation and progress possible. For this, I'm joined by my moderator, Souad Adnan. She's an international development consultant and also a friend of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation, and she'll be moderating this conversation all the way from Vienna. Hello, Souad, and welcome. There we go.
I muted myself.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Over to you, Souad.
I'm doing well. Lockdown. We're into a complete lockdown now, so.
It's so sad you couldn't join us in a studio.
Yes. But I hope my place does the job.
Fantastic. Over to you, Souad.
Okay, let me get it started then, right?
Yes, over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you're all keeping well and safe wherever you are. I'm Souad Adnan, and I'm the facilitator for this session. I would like to thank the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for their kind invite and for all their efforts to put this event together despite the multiple challenges. We know it's not easy. I would also like to welcome our 5 distinguished speakers for today's panel on innovation and partnership in the Mediterranean area. So let me introduce them very quickly. We have with us today Dr. Haizam Amirah-Fernández, who is a senior analyst for the Mediterranean and the Arab world at Elcano Royal Institute in Madrid. He's also professor of international relations at IE School of Global and Public Affairs. He specializes in international relations, political Islam, intercultural dialogue, and transitions to democracy in the Arab world, where he has lived for over 16 years. Our second speaker is Dr. Eduard Soler, senior analyst at CIDOB, which is Barcelona, stands for Barcelona Center for International Affairs. Between 2016 and 2019, he was scientific coordinator of MENARA, a European project on geopolitical shifts in the Middle East and North Africa. He holds a PhD in International Relations from the Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona, where he's culturally affiliated as a part-time lecturer in international relations. Our third speaker, Dr. Nouh Harmouzi, who has over 15 years of research experience in the economic and political landscape in the Arab world. He's currently the executive director of the Arab Center for Scientific Research and Humane Studies, which is a think tank based in Morocco, and chief editor of the Arabic news platform and analysis website minbaralhurriya.org. He is now a professor of economics at Ibn Tufayl University in Morocco. But before returning, Nouh served as an assistant professor at Aix-Marseille University in France. Mr. Yasser Akkaoui, through Capital Concept, Mr. Akkaoui has become one of the reference names in corporate governance activism in the Middle East and North Africa. In 2013, Capital Concept became the first corporate governance rating and advisory firm to review and rate listed companies in the MENA region. He's currently the editor-in-chief of Executive Magazine, which is a media platform that uses that advocates actually for reforms in the region. He is also the chair of Lebanon Committee of Human Rights Watch Advisory. Our last speaker, final speaker, who is Mr. Maroun Keirouz. He is a deputy head of the Middle East, North Africa, and Europe at World Economic Forum, which is an international organization based in Geneva. Before joining the World Economic Forum, Maroun held leadership roles at Procter & Gamble, the Central Bank of Lebanon, and Oxfam, where he worked on the Syrian crisis. He has also taught at Notre Dame University in Lebanon. So, before turning to our distinguished panelists for their inputs, I would like to open the session by sharing a thought. It won't be so long, it's a short one, so please bear with me. The Mediterranean Sea was the center of the region of North Africa and the Middle East and Europe for so long. It was the superhighway of transport, trade, and cultural exchange between diverse peoples of 3 continents. The Mediterranean basin has known, therefore, the succession and cohabitation of many great civilizations: the Greek, the Phoenician, Persian, Roman, Byzantine, the Islamic, and many other civilizations. Byblos in Lebanon, or Jbeil, which is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world, is one great example of this cohabitation. The southern and northern shores of the Mediterranean have always been connected in so many ways. Jbeil would tell you the exact same thing. No surprise then that the challenges faced by every single country in the region today has its answer elements all over the Mediterranean neighborhood. And only by cooperating and speaking with one another at eye level can countries gather the answer elements to their respective challenges. And only then can the Mediterranean region be a real international power and achieve the goals it formally set for itself 25 years ago at the Barcelona process. How can this cooperation take place? What are the opportunities, the challenges, and the stakeholders? How is the pandemic affecting all of this, and how can we move together forward? Our speakers will help answer these questions. I'm sure their insights will be enlightening. And now let me start with Dr. Haizam Amirah-Fernández. Haizam, I know you've been working on a report with the Friedrich Naumann Foundation that aims to provide some answers to the questions I've just posed. Relaunching Mediterranean Relations, Creating Bonds That Deliver is the title of the report, I believe. What can you tell us about the report? What are the main findings and conclusions? How do they answer some or all of the questions I've just posed? Over to you, Haizam.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Saad. Thanks to the Foundation for inviting me to be here with you in this lovely and sunny Saturday afternoon here in Madrid. A pleasure joining this group of speakers. It would have been great also to have more females in other panels speaking about things different from gender. But I hope in future editions that will happen, and I'm sure there are great speakers in contact with the Foundation who can do that great job. So yes, I would like to introduce in a few minutes a project that we're currently working on together with my colleague Eduard Soler, who is with us today from CIDOB in Barcelona, and myself from Elcano Institute here in Madrid, together with the Foundation. That project deals with the research that we're conducting to present some ideas and analyses on the need to relaunch Euro-Mediterranean relations. You just mentioned the Barcelona process, or the Euro-Mediterranean partnership that was launched back in 1995. That means that this year is the 25th anniversary of that. In a way, it was a revolutionary approach to the region as a whole, but with all the different trends of the Mediterranean basin. The idea of creating a region where there could be more prosperity, peace, and stability. So those countries who came together back in '95 voluntarily saw that there was a need to correct things that were not working as the inhabitants or the populations of the region wished. The diagnosis made in the Barcelona Declaration, which I encourage everyone to take a look at it. I think the diagnosis at that time was pretty accurate of what were the challenges and the needs, the things that had to change or to reform in order to achieve that goal of more shared prosperity, and also creating an area of free trade around the Mediterranean, which was scheduled to take place in 2010. So 15 years after the launch of the Barcelona process. Unfortunately, that has not happened yet. We don't have a Euro-Mediterranean free trade area, not yet. We're far from there. So after 25 years, and coinciding with the 10th anniversary of the Arab uprisings, we thought that we should come together, analyze where we are right now. No need to mention the importance of the Mediterranean that you alluded to already, Souad, and why it is still for all the the human societies who live around that sea and beyond. But we want to analyze so those past 25 years, what are the things that have not worked according to the vision that was presented in '95, and where we may be heading given the tendencies that we've seen in the region over that period of time, a quarter of a century, which is enough to analyze and see the trends, and especially the acceleration of trends since 2011 and the COVID-19 pandemic. So obviously my colleague Eduard will also expand on some of the different fields that we are analyzing, incorporating voices from around the region who are not the usual analysts or policymakers who have written, we have written tons of works about the Barcelona process, and actually some feeling a little bit of fatigue or even frustration at not only that it has not advanced enough, but basically that the situation now has deteriorated on so many fronts compared to what we had back in 1995. So this is the research that we're conducting, the report that should out by the beginning of next year. That will be launched, and we'll have events also to present the findings of the report, and also the policy recommendations about what to do, especially at the time when the multiple crises provoked by the COVID-19 pandemic, not only the health crisis, but on top of that, the economic, the social crisis that will have political ramifications of different types around the Mediterranean, not only the south, also in the north of the Mediterranean, the need to reconstruct so many things after this. So some policy recommendations to try to present a vision or to draw the attention of policymakers, of the public opinion in general, of what we should expect if nothing is done, if we continue doing business as usual on autopilot, like it has been done for the past too many years. So this is what we're working on, and we look forward to presenting all those findings to all of you watching and to other, the audience and the policymaker and public opinion in general. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Haizam. We're also looking forward to the report. I would like to ask Eduard, would you please give us, I know that Haizam said the report is forthcoming, it's for the beginning of the next year, but we would truly appreciate it if you could give us a glimpse into the findings, the main findings of the report, and focus especially on a very important aspect mentioned by Haizam, which is incorporating voices, new voices into the report and hearing from them, besides the traditional policymakers and other stakeholders. Thank you.
Thanks, Souad, and thanks to the foundation. And this is a good starting point when you said about the new voices and do things differently. I mean, as you said, we are in a panel where we are discussing about innovation and partnership. And that's why the first comment that Haizam made was so important. I mean, innovation meaning that we cannot do things as we used to, and also that we have to be on an equal footing. And an example of this is that this kind of panels where we are almost all male cannot happen. I mean, this is one aspect of these things that when we think about how humanitarian relations should be, cannot be. But what it means, I mean, as you said, 25 years of the Barcelona process, 10 years of the Arab uprisings, few months after COVID. So the first two provoke a wave of illusion, and also we have seen also a wave of disillusion also with COVID. In a way, it means, as Haizam was saying, that we cannot work on the same. We have to work on the same topics because, as Haizam said, the ideas, the goals that were agreed upon in 1995 are still valid, but the world and the region is changing, and we are facing challenges that we were not facing a few years ago. So it means that when we are thinking about how to revisit, how to relaunch, how to reimagine Euro-Mediterranean relations for the next decade, we have to incorporate topics that perhaps were not as present in the agenda, and by incorporating also those topics, we need to engage with new people, with other voices that are rarely heard. Which are those new topics? Well, there are some which are quite evident and that are also part of the transformational processes the European Union itself is part of, or it's embedded in, which is digitalization, which is decarbonization. All those topics will shape somehow not only the EU, but also its external relations, and not only the Mediterranean countries and the Mediterranean partners, but also their external relations. But there is, as I was referring also to the 10th anniversary of the Arab uprisings, also inequalities. And that was an issue that perhaps was not present enough in 1995. And we realized that there are all sorts of inequalities, gender inequalities, generational inequalities. The issue of youth unemployment is key. We also have social inequalities among the very few that have a lot and the many that have little. We have also territorial inequalities. So this issue of inequalities probably will need to be more present because we know that otherwise it is not sustainable. Mobility. In a moment where we stop traveling, perhaps we are more aware also of what it means not to be able to move. So this aspect, which many also of our colleagues in the Southern and Eastern Mediterranean have been encountering, these difficulties to move, and what it means also, it's an aspect that we have to incorporate. And finally, because we are also in these COVID times where we realize how important it's innovation and science, and do it together. Also, all those aspects about creation, about science, innovation, education probably will need to be part of this agenda in order to build and to create these bonds that deliver. There are all sorts of bonds, and bonds may be tighter, looser, but there are some bonds that deliver, and there are some bonds that just stick you together, but this is not what we aim at. We won't change geography, that's for sure, but we may need, and we can, and we need to change the way in which we relate to each other.
Thank you so much, Eduard. My question now, it's very interesting what you've just said about the new challenges and the importance to incorporate all these emerging aspects in the region. My question is, if you have to draw one lesson from the past 25 years since the conclusion of the Barcelona process, of one thing to do differently, what would that be?
One thing to do differently would be to speak to as many people as possible, and this links to the part on listening to voices. The Euro-Mediterranean relations cannot be a purely intergovernmental process. We need to incorporate scientists, business people, artists, youth organizations. Probably there will be moments where the interstate relation may collapse, but if the other streams of cooperation and dialogue are still ongoing, then probably we can continue building and tying this Euro-Mediterranean relation. So I would say, yes, we need states, obviously, and it is important for all of us to push for stronger international cooperation when it comes at the interstate relation, but we also need to invest probably more on building this more robust and diverse net of relations.
Thank you so much, Eduard. And I would like to build on what you've just said and ask Nouh whether he relates, being an expert of the Middle East and North Africa and having worked in the region for so long with political institutions, but also with all sorts of institutions, economic and social and so forth. Do you relate to what Eduard has just said in terms of incorporating more stakeholders? How would this work in the Middle East and North Africa? You're muted, Nouh. I can't hear you, Nouh. I think you're muted.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Yes, of course, definitely I agree with the former speaker about the importance to empower and to include all the stakeholders. And this is what I want to talk about that, and they want to talk about the political parties and the political spectrum in this MENA region to understand its situation and draw some lessons and give some suggestions how to make it, how to empower it, how to make these political parties, associations, etc. cooperate and collaborate and build coalitions and partnerships together in this region. So in my intervention, it will be two-time intervention. I would like to talk or to present the political quickly spectrum or situation in this region after the Arab Spring and after the outbreak of the COVID-19. This is extremely important to draw lessons and to suggest some practical, feasible solutions. Quickly, I want just to remind that we witnessed a kind of decline of the classical political parties since 2010, and we know all the dissolution of the التجمع الدستوري الديمقراطي in Tunisia. Also in Egypt, big party, Hosni Mubarak party, Hizb al-Watani al-Demokrati, was dissolved. So this is the first element or the first point. The second point, we witnessed also the emergence of new political parties, but they have a very challenging resilience capacity. And this is the new feature of the new political party emerged after the Arab Spring. I have in mind the party Hirak Tunis, created by Munsif al-Marzouqi, which was unable to resist and to ensure continuity due to internal conflict between members. Second, I have in mind Hizb al-Masriyin al-Ahrar, the political party, who was initially successful, but internal conflict and division emerged. I can give few other examples. حزب المصري الاجتماعي الديمقراطي، العدل ومصر الحرية، حزب الدستور. I can give few political parties, example for few political parties from Morocco, الاتحاد الاشتراكي, etc. So this is the second main feature or characteristic of the political party or political spectrum after the Arab Spring. We notice also a counter-revolution and the return of the military institution which is controlling the political party, such in Egypt, such in Algeria, in Sudan, after the coup d'etat, and after in Egypt, or after what's happening in the second wave of the Arab Spring in Sudan and in Algeria. And finally, concerning the political spectrum, we witness also the repression of the political opposition and weakening and which weakened the political parties. In a study conducted by Austrian AIES Institute, they showed that surveillance policies in the MENA regions as the Arab Spring have intensified censorship and data espionage. So this is the situation very briefly, and we can come back to that and to talk about it, the situation of the political spectrum. So this political spectrum and this evolution impacts the political behavior of the citizens of the populations. Let me give you some hints or the evolution of the situation. So they use the political power, they use COVID-19 to reinforce the deep state. They use the outbreak of the coronavirus as pretext to crack down on human rights and for political purpose, etc. In my country town in Morocco, the government tried to pass bill, we call it 2220, to control more social network and political opinion. So what are the consequences as presented by the Arab, for example, Arab opinion report? The consequences is kind of increase of the loss of confidence and the non-representativeness of the political parties. Let me give you a few figures quickly. In 2060, a minority of people across this region report to be a member of political party, nearly 5%. 67% of the population, they declare, or the respondent, the lost confidence in political parties. In 2018, after four election process, municipal and parliamentary and presidential, that took place in 4 Arab countries, in Egypt, in Tunisia, in Lebanon, in Iraq, that confirmed that the increase of electoral hesitation in these countries from year to year, especially among the youth. This is the first thing. The second thing, what we call the emergence of what we call the digital shift, and this is extremely important, and all solutions they need to take this digital shift into consideration. So political participation in our world is becoming more and more virtual. According to the to Arab Opinion Index, big majority, and I can give you the figures, citizens in the Arab world have changed their political behavior since 2000, since the Arab Spring. They rely on new communication technologies to access to information and to follow the news. They use social network to express their political point of view and to interact on economic, social, and political issues. 61% they use social network for political purposes. I just want to give the final example, the boycott campaign in Morocco and how it was very successful by using social network. This boycott campaign, for who does not know it, it has been very popular. In few months, more than 90% of Moroccan, they were aware of the boycott campaign of 3 products, and almost 3/4 of the citizenship of the Moroccan citizen, they participate in this campaign, in this political campaign. This is to stress the importance of taking into consideration the digital shift. So I have some suggestions to adopt or to cope with this, what we can call this new normal politically, but maybe later on I can talk about them.
Yeah. Thank you, Nouh, for your insightful thoughts. We will definitely talk later about your recommendations on how to cope with the new normal, as you call it. But I have a quick question, and I would solicit your answer in 1 minute, please. You've mentioned the situation and from the perspective of the southern shore of the Mediterranean, which I think is very important, because oftentimes throughout the past 25 years, there have been a lot of situations where the two shores did not understand each other and did not account at least for each other's priorities. And now you've told us about an important priority for the southern shore countries, which is maybe to reform political culture and the role of political parties. My question, how can the northern shore help the southern shore to reach that, to achieve that objective? I know it's too complicated to answer in 1 minute, but if you can maybe name one or two things that our friends in the northern shore could do to help the countries in the southern shore deal with the failure of political parties and political culture, maybe.
In 2 words, training and partnership and sharing kind of resource bank, and I will talk about the solution later on. I will give example of some solutions, workable solutions and successful solutions, but it's extremely important to stop to look at this region or the South region and to talk always about stopping immigration and stopping terrorism, but working with the civil society, sharing the best practices and building true and permanent and durable partnership by sharing the best practices. But I will go back to that in my recommendations.
Thank you, Nouh, again for your insightful thoughts. I would like to turn to Mr. Yasser Akkaoui. Nouh mentioned the failure of political parties in the region, in the Middle East and North Africa. Yasser, do you see any viable alternative to political parties, or at least to complement to political parties in the region? You've been working extensively with the private sector, with civil society organizations. Do you think they could have an added value to the integration process of the Mediterranean area? And how is that, if so?
Thank you very much, and thank you, FNF, for this great discussion. To answer your question, never has the drift between people's expectation and government policymakers been so large. Of course, our policymakers, or the policymakers and the political establishment in the region, have been the experts of grabbing power and keeping power. And they're not at all about preserving value and growing value. These are totally different concepts, and this is why the scene doesn't look that good. So the political establishments are in a serious crisis. They are at the brink of losing their purposes if they are unable to really find solutions to the impact of COVID, and of course the climate change and the decreasing price of oil, which has impacted the cumulative GDP of the whole region from Morocco to Iraq quite considerably, and the drought and the wars that have plagued the whole region. This has a huge impact on society itself. And of course, our political establishments, they haven't been able to migrate or to have proper policies to migrate from their extractive models to inclusive models. After a lot of calls from the north and the south and the east and the west for them to start these migrations did not start. So they are really in a crisis unless they are able to democratize their economies, which is crucial for honoring people's at least economic constitutional rights, which have been neglected for decades. So any political establishment, if they want to try to keep a purpose which it has been totally lost so far across the region. They have to really look back in the constitutions and to democratize economies and to basically make sure, for example, civil society, which has been gaining ground and trust over years, because they are better suited to integrate, for example, concepts like design thinking, to identify human-centered solutions to current challenges. The private sector also is facing an issue, because the classical models of the private sector, which, since you are a development economics expert, usually there is this coziness between the private sector and political establishments, which are not viable anymore, because governments, they don't have a propensity to invest or spend anymore. They are more drowning in debt than anything else. The whole world is drowning in an increasing debt. So the propensity to spend of governments is decreasing. So the only way to find pockets of opportunity is, of course, help entrepreneurs and young entrepreneurs, I want to call them, to be able to retain the value that they are able to have and to grow that value. But these entrepreneurs do not depend on political establishments. These are free souls that operate on a more global, sophisticated, and increasingly globalized economic model that political establishments cannot control. They cannot control what I do behind my laptop and the websites or the design thinking models I come up with. So meanwhile, the citizens, have definitely trust the private sector more than, or private enterprise, if I may say, more than the political establishment or anything that has to do with what is offered by the state, which has deceived them over the years. So we are at the landscape that's quite peculiar, because at least on a behavioral manner, and we have noticed that at least during the year, and this is why I second what has just been said, the behavior has been opposite to what expected. Instead of the establishments reaching out to the solution, to those who have the solution, and adopt a consultative, participatory approach to finding a solution, and to empower those that have to be empowered, those that have the solution. They have turned the opposite, and they have stuck to their old ways, which is repressing, controlling, and extracting, if I may say, at the cost of the suffering of the people. So again, the drift is huge, and unless there is an enabler, we can trigger or nudge all these players to adopt a consultative, participatory, if you want, approach or method to sit together and find creative solutions to the increasing challenges that we'll be facing. I mean, the region will be in a worse situation than we are here today. So a second Arab Spring might emerge again.
I'm not sure whether a second Arab Spring is a good or a bad thing, to be honest. I won't comment on that. Anyhow, my question is, you've mentioned the importance of entrepreneurs, and I totally agree with you. I think these people have the potential to improve and to develop the Mediterranean region. But now with all what's going on in the pandemic, as we all know, a lot of people have just lost their jobs. Business owners have lost their businesses. Despite governments trying to help and put in money in a lot of businesses, small and medium, but still it's not the challenge is much bigger than what the government is doing, or governments in the region are doing right now. So how can we empower those entrepreneurs, Yasser, in the region? What can we do as a Mediterranean region? What can we do to empower those entrepreneurs?
Well, when the first wave of entrepreneurship came our way in 2009, 2010, okay, the promise we made them, is adopt these best practices and adopt these globalized Silicon Valley, if you want, models, and this is the way forward. So somehow entrepreneurs lost their local citizenships and immediately started thinking on a globalized manner. And this was predicted by Robert Kaplan in his famous 1997 article in The National, entitled "Was Democracy Just a Moment?" And he predicted this. But after COVID, after climate change, after the crisis have hit home, entrepreneurs have a more immediate local roles to play, and they have become and they have come back, left their little screens and their voyeur, if you want, habits, and they are much more in touch with their immediate environments. And that's where entrepreneurs, at least I can say from Lebanon, where basically, of course, the financial crisis coupled with the COVID and the August 4th crisis, we have seen these same entrepreneurs more than ever, much more involved in their immediate environments. And they have a say with what government they want in the future, elections, and of course, they are much more involved in helping on the ground. They have a much bigger role to play. They have a seat at the table today. They want that seat. We have to respect that, and we have to enable that. We have to welcome them on the table. So they have returned, if you want, from their cloud to reality. And we have to welcome that and honor that.
Thank you, Yasser, for your insights. I agree that although the pandemic has brought so many challenges, it's also an opportunity. It has created a lot of opportunities. So it's maybe the blessing of a curse, I don't know. But definitely one blessing is the turn of humanity towards technology and the use of technology to do things and to solve issues. And for that, clearly I'm not an expert on the topic, so I will turn to Maroun, who might ask to talk more about the role of technology in fitting the puzzle pieces together. Do you see any aspects of what the panelists have covered that could be addressed from a technology lens? What role could technology play in promoting partnership and integration in the Mediterranean region, be it with empowering entrepreneurs or political parties or the private sector? I don't know. You're the expert, and I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Souad. If you allow me, I just want to paint the context here. Of course, technology provides many opportunities, but the pace at which it has been unraveling is unprecedented in human history. And that also brings with it challenges and considerable risks. Let me illustrate. It took 100 years for the telephone to reach 100 million people. It took around a decade for 2 billion people to have a smartphone. So you can see this pace of change always brings with it, yes, a lot of opportunities, but a lot of discomfort, a lot of rage, as we are seeing across the world. The big tussle that we see, the heating up of tensions between China and America, have been called a trade war, but what it is really about is about technology. Who is going to lead the next century? Basically, that is what this is about. The implication for our region is we are increasingly pressured to take sides. More and more, size will matter. In a datified economy, the bigger your population, the more potent and strong your algorithms. What does it mean for a region of mostly medium and small countries? And there I bring the partnership angle. It means if we don't band together, our power is going to diminish. We are going to have to take the rules that others impose. They talk a lot about the Brussels effect, the fact that whatever policies on standards the EU adopts, everyone else has to adjust to. But this is going to be in the future. I expect there will be a Washington and a Beijing effect as well, as we see more a splinternet than an internet taking form. And that's why I want to highlight for countries the size of ours, either we come together or we are going to lose a lot of our independence. That's the first angle on partnership. Now, second angle, Eduard mentioned inequalities. It doesn't have to be that way, but the way things have gone so far, technology has been deepening inequalities between the haves and have-nots, but also between men and women. And the pandemic is only accelerating trends that we were already witnessing before. What does it mean for the region? We need a full revision of our social safety nets, apolitical, objective, citizen-centered social safety nets is what I'm talking about, not cronyism or patronage. That's one. And second, we need to rethink our education models. The Middle East and North Africa, related to its level of development, is one of the worst performing in international tests like the PISA test. What we need, and there I want to say, the education models of the future that can respond to this imperative is not just about learning programming and coding and things like that. It goes much deeper. It's about learning critical thinking, making it at the core of our curricula, about listening, active listening, and anyone that's in a workplace now knows how hard this is to have. Anyone that's recruiting know how difficult it is to recruit for this in an era where attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. And empathy. It's a lot of the trends that we see, a lot of the rage and we've seen it in the US election, is a lack of empathy. People are unable to identify anymore with people who are different. And I just want to throw an idea out there. Imagine if we leveraged virtual reality and forced every male student to see the world through virtual reality, through the eyes of a woman in the region. How much more you would have empathy for how it is to live in the Middle East as a woman, and the gender gap and the formidable obstacles that women face in that region. I think that's even more important than just learning programming and coding and all of that. And finally, one last angle and one last big transformation that we are seeing across the world and where the Middle East is lagging a bit is the thing about sustainability. Over the past few years, and even more so over the past month, we've seen China, Japan, Korea, the EU, all commit to net zero futures with different dates, different timelines. And it seems the Biden administration is going to do the same. Now, for a region that relies mostly on extractive resources, what does this mean? And how do we adapt? I come from a country, Lebanon, that has completely destroyed its environment without even an industry base. I don't know if there's another country that has managed the same. I mean, a lot of the polluters have massive industries. So what does it mean for the future? How do we repurpose our industries? How do we leverage technology? For example, solar energy generation has gone down, the price of it, by 86% over the past 10 years. Can the Middle East repurpose itself to become an exporter of sustainable energy instead of just hydrocarbons? And can, for example, North Africa be a hub for exporting solar energy to Europe, as one example? I'm not naive. Of course, sustainable energy still faces massive issues, intermittency not the least of them. But we have now 20, 30 years. In 20, 30 years, our model is going to be obsolete. So how do we change that in the sustainability domain? I'll stop here. Over to you, Souad. Happy to take any further questions.
Well, thank you so much, Maroun. You've touched on so many interesting topics that I'm not sure where to start. But I very much like the virtual reality example to test or to see what women go through and endure in our region every day. And I was thinking when you said that maybe the guy on that virtual reality machine would just give in after the first word of harassment he would hear on the street, or maybe once when he sees himself denied a job only because he's a woman of a childbearing age. That would be exciting, actually. I wish this idea comes true and it gets experienced by our dear male friend compatriots. So I have a question on, you mentioned the opportunities, and I think the issue of supply chain diversification is one of them, actually. And as dependence on one or just few suppliers in the Far East harms Europe's strategic interests, how can the Middle East and North Africa take advantage of this, of the pandemic, actually, and of the need to diversify the supply chain? You mentioned few examples, but how can it concretely happen given all the shortcomings of the economic and political system in the region? What would be the first step to be able for the countries in the region to take on this opportunity?
I want to talk about partnerships, because this is what it's about, partnerships and innovation. I think we need really a mind. I'm talking at least for developing countries in the region. Maybe that doesn't apply for the GCC. But what we need is a shift in mindset on the part of our Western European partners. And that I want to point to two things. First of all, I would love to see more insistence on full transparency as a condition for any sort of partnership and aid. Coming from Lebanon, this is a clear ask as a citizen first. And second, I would say I would love to see aid replaced with investment instead of providing these grants. I would love, for example, for a VC, a sort of VC to support social entrepreneurs that invests there, and maybe after a while they sell their stake and recoup it. But that's what I would love to see in the near future, those two things in terms of partnership there.
Thank you so much, Maroun. I think this links perfectly with what Yasser previously covered and the importance of entrepreneurs. So let me now just ask one question that I received from the audience, and please feel free to either, Maroun or any of the speakers to take it. So the question is from Samah, and she's saying, a question that requires a real and effective answer. Are the European partners sincerely ready to link their relation with Egypt with an opening space for democratic parties' establishment and work? I can repeat if need is. And please, whoever wants to take that question. Otherwise,
if I may, Souad, yes, this is Haizam. I think we have a clear example from the past few days. Okay, and you may have heard about the arrest and detention of some activists, Egyptians, who work at the Egyptian Initiative for Personal Freedom, if I'm not mistaken, if that's the name, sorry, for personal rights, I think, EIPR. So why were they detained, or what was the context? It was done just right after them having met a number of ambassadors and representatives from West countries' embassies in Cairo. I think it was a group of like 14, 15 ambassadors and deputy ambassadors. Look at the reactions from the governments of those embassies, actually, Europeans or from members of the EU or even European members of the EU. It's been, it's taken some time, mild reactions. The idea that, realpolitik, you have to maintain good relations with the regimes that do bad things to their peoples and they do not comply with their own commitments, international commitments regarding human rights, rule of law, due process, and everything like that. I think there's a problem in the north, and we've written about this, and Eduard and I, we've debated a lot, and it's part also of a report we are producing together with FNF. The idea that there is some sort of a fake dilemma when it comes to European approach to its southern neighborhood. The dilemma being, guiding European action for so many years, for the past quarter of a century at least, and that is that if you want real reform and if you want to build a ring of democratic states, or at least let's put it this way, where the rule of law functions and you have effective states, then you will have to put pressure on governments and regimes, and that will create problems, and you will lose your allies, contacts, etc., etc. Whereas if you want to keep stability, understood as authoritarian stability, then you have to accept, that they do bad things at home, and they do not fulfill or basically honor those commitments that were signed voluntarily. I think that's a problematic dilemma, because at the end of the day, and time tells us, you get the worst of both worlds. So you don't get actors, civil society, accountability, because regimes know that they can function and operate with almost total impunity. But at the same time, stability is not guaranteed. It's not sustainable. We've seen 2 waves already of Arab mobilizations, massive uprisings, asking for changes, and regimes stopping any possible alternative from emerging by using all sorts of means, of repression and other things, or preventing people who have the charisma, the capacity of bringing about an alternative from organizing and building blocks, etc. So unfortunately, that dilemma is still there. I think that's what's at the core of the problems of the Euro-Mediterranean region as a whole, and the problems that that dilemma fomented by democratic regime. They like it. They promote it. They say it's either us or chaos, or instability, or war. And then you have to add another layer of geopolitics on top of that, of power competition. But that's for another thing. It will be in the report, so hopefully we can speak better there.
Thank you, Haizam. I would also like to have Nouh's input, since he covered the role of political parties in the region and the challenges they've been going through. So on maybe, and we can also link it to the second part of your presentation, or about the solutions to the challenges you've presented. So do you think, just to a quick reminder of Nouh's question, so do you think that okay, let me just get back the question. Okay, so do you think that the European partners, again, are sincerely ready to link their relation with the region, be it Egypt or any other country, with an opening space for democratic parties' establishment and work?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that we need to ask our European partner. We cannot talk on their behalf. I can just assume their good faith, and I think that they did some good initiative to show this good faith. But I'm not an European. I'm Moroccan. So, and I think that we don't need to wait to wait for outsider to help us to resolve the situation. If the help is here, it's more than welcome. If not, I think we need to handle and to deal with our internal problems and to resolve them ourselves. This is intrinsic solution, not extrinsic or exogenous solution. So, few in quick sentences, how to cope with this new normal? What the political parties they should stop, what they should start, and what they should accelerate to be able to cope with this the new normal or the digital shift or transformation. They stop assuming that the old way will come back. This is first. Second, accelerating the best practices around collaboration, flexibility, inclusion, and accountability. And I don't think that I have time to give more details about that. Third point is stop relying.
You have time. Please feel free.
Okay. So
our session will end at 3 p.m. Just to let everyone.
Cool. This is good news. Thank you so much. So we need to change if we want to borrow some concept from business, from companies, from enterprise perspective. I think that we need to modernize the structure of the political parties. We need to stop working or shifting or accelerating the shift from lines and silos to network and to teamwork. We also need the political parties to accelerate the transition to agility. Agile political parties are more decentralized and they depend less on top-down command and control decision making. They create agile teams which are allowed to make the most day-to-day decision. Changing communication policy by integrating social network, definitely to ensure the generalization of political information. I want also to talk about some experience by the NDI Institute. We need to learn from real-life examples through analyzing. We have a lot of case studies to help political parties to learn from experience of other worldwide political parties and organizations. The National Democratic Institute, NDI, they have very interesting website which can serve as resource for political parties that want to use technology to improve their way of functioning. So this is the first thing. The second thing, political parties, they can consult digital parties portal. Once again, if we want to improve the work of the political parties, we need to be able to cope with the digital transition. So digital party portal is also a resource that parties can use to start adopting new technologies in their day-to-day work and to participate definitely with confidence in this digital evolution. We can find many programs. One of the programs is Candidate Cloud, which offer political parties data-driven engagement strategies. We can use a program called Freedom. It's kind of private network that empower political parties and their members and can make the network more focused and more strong. We can also use Zeleno program, which also can be useful. Political parties also, they can, for development partnership and network, can use face banking program, and all this program we can find them easily in internet to identify possible voter and customize campaign messages on Facebook. The final program, which is I find extremely that can be very useful to political parties. The name of the program is GOV, G-O-V. It's a program that helps party and citizens to learn from each other. And this is why I talked in the beginning about resource bank and mutualizing resource. For our case, for our political parties, it's definitely better to accept the reality that the future isn't what it used to be, and we need to start to think how to make it work after the Arab Spring and after the digital shift. In order to accelerate the road to recovery, political party leaders, they need to instill spirit of both of purpose and optimism, and to make the case that even an uncertain future, which is our case right now, with effort, can definitely be better. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nouh. Maroun, do you have anything to say on that? Political parties and technology and the use of all the platforms that Nouh has just mentioned.
I think, of course, it's been well covered, the role of technology in political mobilization. But I think it's not enough. If you look at our countries, a big issue that I've noticed in the past is there's a tendency for activists, especially social media activists, to engage only young people and digital savvy people. And still, I look at my country in Lebanon, still maybe half or around that segment of people are more, let's say, traditional. They are still engaged through traditional networks. And I think of my parents, for example, or people in my entourage, and there has not been enough efforts to engage with these types of voters who might have a more conservative, and I use the word conservative here to denote how they approach politics, not necessarily for their inclinations. And that's also part of why you see in some of the latest movements, you see them limited to a certain stratum of society. And that's homework and hard work that I think activists have to also fulfill. They have to go to the countryside, they have to go to towns and meet with these people who are different and have a different approach to politics, and stop patronizing them even, I would say.
Yes, thank you, Maroun, for insight. I see Yasser has something to say. I actually had a question for you too, Yasser, but please, I'll let you react to what Maroun said, because I think you're muted.
Please ask me the question. Maybe I can combine both together.
Okay, so I have a question from the audience. Portugal is a pioneer in attracting digital entrepreneurs and built a vibrant hub. This is pumping up in Egypt, Jordan, and Lebanon. States must improve regulatory framework. Any change to help there? So it's about the use of technology in entrepreneurship, digital entrepreneurship in the region, and the role of state and the regulatory framework.
Absolutely. I mean, today, legal and regulatory frameworks that govern how entrepreneurs work have elevated beyond local laws. I mean, VC laws and PE laws. Whenever you sign a contract, it's a globalized contract today more than ever. What changes is the infrastructure and the availability of resources or of capital in your own country, and this is where the challenge comes. Is a country, let's say, like Lebanon, which doesn't have a PE law, by the way, or PE or VC law, doesn't have an insolvency law or a bankruptcy law. How is it going to allow entrepreneurship to strive and to be able to hook up and to partner with other hubs in Portugal or other than Portugal? So a country like Lebanon has to keep up. But even if you end up providing such an infrastructure, it doesn't mean that you would have the good governance and the good entrepreneurship, the good infrastructure to allow it to strive. I will take, for example, Tunis. You know, Tunis, in my opinion, is one of the most educated and sophisticated people. So much has been invested in education, but what have we done with education? You know, did education take us anywhere? You know, women's rights in Tunis. I compare Tunis to Lebanon, and in Tunis, women have much more rights than in Lebanon. But what have we done with these laws? You know, did it really trigger an inflection point in the behavior of the people? Did it allow us to migrate from a state of mind to another? It didn't. You know, simply because, again, I'm linking with the first question. This is because of the political process. So the political process has always been about grabbing power, keeping power, and guess what? And apologize if, and of course I'm not here to offend, but the Northern Hemisphere had a big say and a big say of who is in power and who is not. I mean, look at in Lebanon. In Lebanon, we waited for the American election to know whether we can form a government in Lebanon, yes or no. In the last 10 years, we have Ikhwan Muslimin that emerged, Ikhwan Muslimin that departed. Was it a democratic process that allowed this to happen? Come on, let's not kid ourselves. There are big plays at hand. Just the last thing I want to say is, if the current crisis have revealed anything, or on a global scale, is how fragile humanity is. And this, if you want, puts in front of us a responsibility, of taking these global challenges and be accountable for. This negligence cannot continue. So the North, the South, the East, the West have to sit together and deal with humanity in a different manner. No, never has our faith or the faith of humanity been so integrated together. So the practices, let's say you look at Yemen, which breaks your heart, and how this collective failure to help the people of Yemen, or the many other collective failures around the world, break your heart, and this has to change. The day I'm going to see the international community, tackle the Yemen crisis in a different way, or the Lebanese crisis, or the Syrian crisis, or the Libyan crisis in a different way, then I will be reassured that we can tackle other on-agenda issues that are important. So far, we haven't seen this maturity on a global scale, not only from the Mediterranean scale. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yasser, for these insights. I would like to jump on a point you've raised, which is women's rights in the region. I'm sorry, I have to, I have to talk about that. And the gender gap, basically, in different areas, including technology. The question was about the role of laws and the regulatory framework. And I can speak to that in the sense, at least from an empirical perspective, that this that laws has played a role in promoting women's rights, when they are enforced, of course, and implemented. And this has been shown to be true empirically, and this has been shown to enhance women's economic participation, either through employment or entrepreneurship. And it is, I think, important to account for a gender lens in any initiative that the region thinks of, or the stakeholders in the region think of, to face the multiple challenges, be it the use of technology or elsewhere. Just an anecdote, I participated in a virtual conference, of course, where the role of technology was discussed in promoting financial inclusion of women. And the guys that were there were just super happy only because women would be able to stay and work from home. That's what the digital technology meant to them. Oh yeah, so our women can stay at home and work from home. And then it just rang a bell. I was like, no, and we should think of that. We should incorporate that thinking. And okay, when we say technology and the possibility to work from home, how does this affect in women's rights and centuries of struggle and to get to those rights, actually. Anyways, I'll stop here on gender, and I would like to ask our friends Haizam and Eduard to speak to the role of European countries, European Mediterranean countries, in solving the issues, or in contributing to solving the issues that were raised in terms of politics, or promoting a democratic space for political parties in the southern shore and so forth. Do you see that Europe should play a role in that sense?
Well, yes, I think we should, and then we can come back to your initial point. I mean, geography. We we are together. That makes a difference. That makes a difference when you compare with the United States or with China and how they look at the region. It makes a difference from all perspectives. I mean, in terms of trade, migration, security, you name it. I mean, if the region enters like a more virtuous circle also of prosperity, stability, that has positive effects on the EU much more than for any other actors in the world. And likewise, if we are in a vicious circle, we will suffer more than anyone else, apart, obviously, from the citizens of the region. So yes, indeed, and the same works on the other side. It means that the countries and societies in the southern and eastern Mediterranean has an interest in the EU not collapsing, recovering economically, and also being a little bit more, I would say, stronger in a way, because the point that the colleague from the audience asked about the situation with Egypt and all of this, it also speaks a lot about this unwritten conditionality of how also, I mean, there is the written conditionality that the Europeans may put on all the papers and everything, but also some of the regimes and governments from the southern and eastern shores of the Mediterranean put their own conditionality to the EU, which is you shut up, you do nothing, you don't put pressure on this, otherwise, you know, migrants. Here, the way we have handled the 2016 management crisis, because it was not a migration crisis, it was a crisis of management, has severely undermined our capacity to resist this kind of pressures. No? So this is, I would say, an important aspect. I think that here what Europeans could do also, apart from the fact of being there and to be sincerely showing that we have an interest. So it's not about goodwill, no, it's interest of our neighbors to be more prosperous and more stable. We may be helping to see together on which aspects there are opportunities to be seized. And here I think that Maroun made a great list of topics where we could benefit together. The issue also of the global supply chains, nearshoring, we both have also an interest, and we will all be affected depending on the way Africa develops. We haven't spoken that much about Africa here, that we can have a positive or either negative impact on the Middle East and North Africa as well as the EU, and on what also Maroun was saying in terms of the renewable energies, clean energies here. Perhaps, well, solar has been the topic of until now. Probably in the next years we will speak a lot more about hydrogen, and here probably this is also an area where Europeans and southern and eastern Mediterranean countries can work together.
Thank you, Eduard. Haizam, do you want to add anything, please?
Yes, I would like to add something. Eduard just mentioned the issue of interests. I don't think it's a matter of altruism for the EU to improve its neighborhood. It's also a matter of interest of having a vision of the neighborhood where you live. I mean, you put it at the individual level or at the level of countries or as a bloc. Let me be a bit more critical here. If we, obviously, European actions are not neutral in the region. So it's either supporting good governance or its actions, when you add the different layers, at the end of the day, it's against advancement towards good governance. So my criticism is the following. Look at the southern and eastern Mediterranean over the past 25 years. Look at the number of new democratic states there. There's only one. It's Tunisia. And it was not a result of European support, promotion of democracy and good governance. In fact, until the very last minute, the main European country, when dealing with Tunisia, was supporting the autocrat and trying to crush and help him crush those people who came out to ask for freedom, for dignity, for good governance. I'm talking about France, obviously. If you look at the number of countries in the southern and eastern Mediterranean that are nowadays failed or failing states compared to what we had back in 1995, the number has increased. Okay, the conflicts that already existed at that time, unfortunately, continue to exist, but there are new ones, bloody ones, with wars, with all sorts of destruction. So Europe is in a state of schizophrenic strategic approach. We want stability, we want to have business and other things, and to have our friends there taking care of the populations and of any possible opposition or anything that could change the status quo. On the one hand, the EU presents itself as a pro-reform actor in the region, while its actions have led to pro-status quo and deteriorating status quo and deteriorated stability as a fact. So I don't know if this pandemic is going to change the mind of European policymakers and their advisors. The new communication that is expected for the coming months about the new approach or relaunching Euro-Mediterranean and neighborhood policies and all those things, will it change that vision, or will we continue doing business as usual and then get surprised saying, hey, it's not working, it's even worse than before? I don't know.
Thank you, Haizam. I would just say something in reaction to what you've said about democracy in the region, and risk to be a bit, to sound simplistic maybe, but I think the curse of resources is something we should think of. All the countries that have resources in the region and all the implications of that. You mentioned, I'm saying that because you and Maroun and I think other speakers mentioned the potential opportunity or area of cooperation, which is energy, clean hydrogen from the desert, to be more specific. And this actually raises a lot of challenges, the similar challenges to what oil has raised in the past. So how is the Mediterranean region coalition thinking to cope with that challenge? I think we've had the experience. We should have learned our lesson. I'm not sure if that is the case, but are we thinking of at least accounting for that in the energy energy cooperation area? That's one that represents a great forthcoming opportunity. Maroun, maybe you want to take that question, or anybody else?
Maybe at the risk of sounding a bit polemic here, Souad, but the region also, I fully agree with what Eduard and Haizam have shared, but we also have to decide, do we want Europe to intervene in our politics when it suits our worldview, or do we want to stay out of our politics and engage in our governments, with our governments? Because there's a bit of mixed messages here, and it seems that whatever Europe is doing, it ends up failing, because whether they support autocrats or support revolutions, at the end, at least half of people are going to say, look at the West playing its old former role. I think your question is more something for us, people of the region, to answer. What form of government do we want? What are we willing to give up to get to that form of government? Because, I'm all for democracy. I'm sitting here in Geneva, Switzerland. I'd be a hypocrite for not saying that. But maybe it's not what everyone wants. I'm just putting it out there. What I would love to see from Europe, though, is more self-confidence. And it really, I mean, we hear talk about open strategic autonomy. This is the buzzword now in the Commission. But it really baffles at the same time and saddens me to see this lack of self-confidence and this self-doubt in a region that maybe has the highest living standards in the world, and that everyone would love to, any person would love to live here if they had a chance. So that's what I would say are the two elements. A more self-confident Europe, I think, would help us a lot in navigating some of the other geopolitical players. And at the same time, I would say It's not simple to say Europe has to support democracy in the region. We need to, there are trade-offs here. That's what I'm trying to say, at the risk, again, of being a bit controversial.
Thank you, Maroun. We have 5 minutes to wrap up, so I'll ask every one of you to take a minute to conclude and share maybe your final thoughts, if any. Since Haizam is raising his hand and he was first to speak, I'll give him the virtual floor to say his final thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, just a quick comment, and I think that's very important what you just mentioned, Maroun, about the preferences and what the populations are willing to, I mean, what type of political systems and the trade-off and what, you know, the sacrifice, because any change in political systems also requires sacrifices in exchange for what? So democracy as in, you know, the result, it's a, you know, when you add so many things that you end up with a democratic system. But there are other prerequisites that I think, you know, look at opinion polls and other things, like a rule of law. So basically having the right to express, you know, and to go to court and to have an equal treatment among, you know, citizens and also towards the state and those in power. So I think that is the starting point. And if we remember, you know, the days of 2011 and demonstrations, so many people taking to the streets, I do not recall having seen signs of democracy like something massive. It was not about democracy, we want democracy. Maybe it was in the mind of some, or maybe of many. But when you saw dignity, you know, social justice, opportunities, fight against corruption, you know, corruption, it's very, very present. All those components, I think there is so much hunger for, you know, to see that people are treated with dignity, and that they don't have to compare themselves with the outside world always to see themselves in the most negative way. Because in other parts of the world, you know, look how they do this and there, and the little one who can challenge the big, powerful one when he has the right to do it and when he feels that he has a just cause. So I think that's a starting point, and Europe is not there. Europe does not see, you know, all those little steps that, when added together, lead to dignified life and to social justice. That is my point when I intervened earlier.
Thank you, Haizam. Eduard, please.
Yes, and I see that perhaps my daughters will enter, so that you will see also that not only women work from home, but also men do. And let me say final words. We are obviously in these COVID times, and this is the most example, the way we are talking today. And I think we have to use that fact in order to rethink the kind of relationships we need to build around the Mediterranean. So what has COVID taught us? The importance of solidarity, and that's on the more positive sense, the importance of solidarity. So the Mediterranean should also be a space of solidarity. We should not forget about this word. Of innovation and knowledge. We have perhaps given too little attention to innovation and knowledge, and it's time to give it more. And also the importance of anticipation and increasing our anticipatory capacity. So you were all saying aspects that can go wrong or that can get well. So we need to be also ready so that we can seize opportunities and that we may avoid risks. And in that sense, that's the moment. We are in a defining moment. There are opportunities that may be emerging. Risks are very apparent, and there will be new crises that we will be facing. That's for sure. But we need to decide in a way among the citizens and also the countries around the Mediterranean whether we want to come together and also to have this anticipatory capacity to face and to rebuild somehow these post-pandemic times, or will each of us go our way and perhaps even looking elsewhere? I'll end with that.
Thank you, Eduard. It's actually great to see that some men help with childcare.
Well, it's not helping, huh? It takes two to tango.
Okay, that's great. So that's a nice way to put it. Let me turn to Nouh, please. You're fine. Yes, Nouh. Yeah, Nouh, and then I think Yasser spoke after you. Yeah, Nouh, please. Your final thoughts.
Yeah, very quickly. We need definitely to stop the lose-lose cooperation or absence of the cooperation and try to invest in win-win cooperation and win-win gain. This is extremely important. I think that partnership will be a good thing for Europe and will be a good thing for our region. This is the first. Second, we need to stop working in lines or in silos and promoting network and teamwork. And we need to learn from the best practices and to draw lessons from the best practices. This is politically talking, but we need to not to forget the economical part, which is equally important. And rather than aid, but trade. Try to open the border, try to empower the private sector, try to empower the role of the entrepreneur, which are the one who can create the value without increasing taxes or burden on the population. So political cooperation and trade rather than aid, because trade is more sustainable.
Thank you, Nouh. Yasser, your final thoughts? You're muted, I guess.
We are, again, the vulnerability that has been exposed globally is also an opportunity to expedite the adoption of what we have been preaching for, at least for the last 10 years. And I doubt, just to end on a positive note, I doubt the world has any more energy for conflict and has any more energy for war. And it's the perfect time for the whole world to take responsibility and accountability and come together in a constructive way, and cooperative way, and a consultative way, and an inclusive way, that allow us for this crisis to get us out to safer shores.
Thank you, Yasser. Maroun, thank you.
Briefly, I just want to reiterate the point that we are facing an era where things are changing faster than they ever had. The key word, and I echo what both Eduard and Yasser have said, the key word here is building our resilience, building our ability to anticipate changes, and that can only be done through opening up and learning from each other, learning from different perspectives. So this is what I want to say. Let's learn from the past, but also look to the future, because we don't have much time to prepare for it.
Thank you so much, Maroun, and I'm so looking forward to your new app. And I'm so ready to provide inputs for your gender simulation experience. Thank you very much to our 5 distinguished panelists for their very insightful thoughts. I think building platforms for exchange and the experience sharing is very important and key to building a real Mediterranean partnership and the real integrated Mediterranean region. And I think this is what the Friedrich Naumann Foundation has just done, creating this platform and allowing to all of us from different parts of the world to meet and discuss and share our ideas. So on behalf of the audience of the panelists, thank you very much, Friedrich Naumann Foundation. We're looking forward to more sessions like this and to taking this work forward. Thank you very much, everyone. I wish you a nice evening wherever you are, or a good day. Not sure what your time zone is. Thank you. And on this, I call this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the great moderation, Souad.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Souad. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.